Hey everyone, Joey here, and today we're going to do a first impressions video of the AYN Thor. For those of you that maybe just don't have 2.5 hours to sort through my live stream, I'm going to give you all new footage, as well as my unfiltered thoughts after having this for about a day. I know a lot of people are excited, and I want to get an actual video out with my consolidated thoughts. Poor newscast, it's going to be a little bit late this week, so I apologize. Now, right away, I want to do a correction on something from the live stream. If you remember, Azahar was not working with the bottom touchscreen. However, with a fork of Azahar, it now does work, and I can touch anywhere I want. So 3DS games are fine. I have already updated my written guide to incorporate the fork instead of actual Azahar. However, I know that Azahar proper, the actual project, is going to be including this fix at some point in the future. Probably before you guys get this in your hands. So for now, if you happen to get this, you're going to need the fork. If not, you can just use regular Azahar probably by the time these ship. Let's do a very quick recap of the specs and price of everything. As a reminder, there is a 6-inch 1080p 120Hz OLED top screen. The bottom screen is a 3.92-inch AMOLED 1080 by 1240 60Hz screen. It is the same screen as the Retroid Pocket Classic, for anybody that's familiar with that. My unit here has the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. It is the 12GB version, so the Pro model. However, there is a Snapdragon 865 version of this device as well, which is the same processor as the Retroid Pocket 5, Mini, and Flip 2. There is active cooling, 6000 mAh battery, 27-watt charging, Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.3, USB-C port that does have video out, and it does display the top screen, not the bottom screen, so keep that in mind. Android 13, and it's about 380 grams, but feels pretty light to my hands. Now, pricing-wise, the Snapdragon 865 version starts at $249 US. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 version starts at $299 for the 8GB 128GB version. Then there's the Pro 12GB 256 version for $349. And lastly, we have the Max 16 1TB version for $429 US. Now, this absolutely nails DS and 3DS from everything perspective. Even something like Kid Icarus, where you're just using the trigger, you're using your left stick, and you're using your actual touchscreen, this all feels great. This is all natural, exactly as it would be on a Nintendo 3DS or DS. It feels fantastic. This honestly feels like Nintendo made this in a lot of different ways. It's got a lot of that quality to it, especially the dual OLED screens like you can see on screen right now. It just looks so great. So yeah, from a DS and 3DS perspective, absolutely nails it. I really hope we get 3DS retro achievements at some point soon because, I really want to use it for this. Given the price of a 3DS nowadays, which I thankfully have one from a long time ago, I think there's a case to be made that you could just grab the Thor instead at this point. Like, a 3DS is very expensive, and from what I've had and what I've been playing with this so far, it's nailing the DS and 3DS for sure. Now, we should talk about the size and weight. It is bigger than I expected. I think it's more in line with the Retroid Pocket Flip 2, for anybody familiar with that. I unfortunately do not have one anymore, so I can't do any side-by-side comparisons with it. But it is bigger than I expected, but not in a bad way. It feels just fine. It feels like a natural upgrade compared to something like the new 3DS, which is what I have right here. This is not the 3DS XL, it's just a new 3DS. And yeah, it's bigger, but it doesn't feel bad in that way. Like, the 3DS is still going to be extremely portable, pocketable, all of that. And that's one of the best parts about it. However, the Thor is slightly bigger, but it's not terrible. It's not a massive difference. It's not something that's going to really put you out. And it was just surprising to me to see it be a little bit thicker than I was expected, a little bit bigger than I was expecting. But weight-wise, it feels just fine. Doesn't feel heavy, doesn't feel weird. All of the weight is congregated into the bottom, not the top. So it's not an RG slide from Ambernick, for example. You have a good distribution of weight, and that feels good. Now, when we talk about the exterior, it's important to mention the hinge. So for example, right now, there are 3 different ways that you can lock in the hinge. There's this, and then there's this. This part is unfortunate. I would have preferred something like the GPD Win Mini where you could put the hinge anywhere you want without having to lock it. It doesn't have that. And so you're basically stuck to ways that they want you to experience the screen. And so I found that yesterday after the live stream, when I went to go and play with it on my couch, I was finding that the hinge angle isn't exactly how I want it to be. So I have to hold the handheld a little bit differently than I want, just so I can see the screen. Now, thankfully, OLED panels have a good viewing angle, so I can look at it normally. But it was something that I was like, man, if I could just change the angle just slightly, I would be a lot happier, that sort of thing. It's important to mention when we talk about the exterior, I have a black unit, so a lot of people are going to worry about smudges. And you probably saw my live stream, there was quite a bit of fingerprints and things like that. It is not as bad as previous Odin devices, but you still probably will see some fingerprints and oil marks and things like that. As you can probably see right now on this device, I haven't cleaned it today. I did clean it last night after showing somebody else what it looked like. And so, yeah, you can kind of see it is nice right now, but over time you are going to see some oil. As far as pocketing this goes, I probably wouldn't pocket this myself, given that I use a sling bag and I throw all of my stuff in there. I think jeans might be stretching a little bit. This is kind of blocky. It is bigger than you would expect. Sweatpants, pajama pants, all of that will be fine, but jeans might be pushing it if that's what you're expecting. Now, I do want to mention something else about the hinge. My device has a weird thing where I can push the bottom right and it moves the entire device, which the left side does not have. It's very sturdy. It's stuck there. For some reason, on my right side, I can move it around as if it's not in or something. I'm not sure what's going on there. Now, if you want me to talk about long-term hinge reliability or do hinge tests, there isn't much I can do here. I could sit here and do this all day long, but we all know that's not a good hinge test. The Retroid Pocket Flip 2 started failing 5 months after it came out. Nobody would ever catch that in a review. So there isn't much I can do here. If you are worried about the hinge, that is going to be something you're going to be worried about with every clamshell device. So you might as well skip this. I can't do any hinge tests and I won't have any hinge tests for the review. Not out of not wanting to do them, it's just simply not something that you can really test at this point. It's just unfortunate that we are here, but if you are worried about that, then I would suggest just skipping this altogether. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the controls. Now, for me, I'm a person that highly values D-pad bottom instead of top for any situation. And so for me, I find this is pretty comfortable as far as everything goes. Now, I have to flare out my hands for it to be very comfortable. My thumb is down here. I usually rest my index on the trigger, and so I'm flaring out like this. For me, this is fine. If D-pad was top, I would be hating all of my life with the stick on the bottom. That is my personal opinion on all of this. Control-wise, though, the D-pad feels nice. It feels like a smaller Odin 2 Portal D-pad because it is a bit smaller. It is not as big as you would expect from an Odin 2 Portal, but it is that same sort of D-pad. So if you like AYN's D-pads, if you like Retroid's D-pads, it is more of the same here. The sticks, I haven't had my Flip 2 in a while. I'm pretty sure they're exact same sticks as the Flip 2. I did show on the live stream, you can throw in the original Odin 2 Portal sticks, not the big ones, but the very small ones that they come with. You can put those there if you want, but I actually find myself enjoying the sticks that this comes with instead. They're very grippy, they feel nice, there's no issues for me. On the buttons end, I do have one unfortunate problem. My A button does get stuck for some reason. I don't know what's going on there, but it gets stuck often. And so I'm hoping this is just a problem with my unit. I'm going to mention this to AYN, but it is getting stuck, and that is an unfortunate part. Otherwise, the controls, very silent. You can't hear these in any situation. The Odin 2 Portal, louder by comparison. I don't have a problem with my Odin 2 Portal's buttons, but I know people are going to like that these are very silent. Now on the back, we have our shoulders and triggers. Shoulders can be very, very loud. Triggers, normal amount. Nothing really too crazy about. Now, while we're here, let's talk about the triggers. And if you've been following me, you know that I've been very worried about the triggers. And unfortunately, it is what I expected. It is the exact same as the Retroid Pocket Flip 2. That means when you are holding it, your fingers expect a curve, right? You are expecting your fingers to go into a curve. But because they are blocky, because of how they set these up, there is no curve. And I know I've showed this comparison off a lot of times, but I'm going to do it again. When you look at something like the Retroid Pocket Flip, the original one, you can see the curve of the triggers. So your hands don't feel bad and you can hold it nicely. There is nice curves here on the Flip 1 that I wish the Thor would have had altogether. Unfortunately, the Thor does not have any of that. So when it comes to trigger heavy things, if you had a Flip 2 and you enjoy it or you find it fine, you won't have an issue here. For everybody else, this is my personal opinion, but I find using the triggers to be just cumbersome. And even in just hotkey situations where I'm just turning on fast forward, I'm turning off fast forward, I'm doing anything like that, to the point where I'm probably going to remap all of my hotkeys off of the triggers to the shoulders instead, including any games that might use the triggers, probably going to put them on the shoulders. This does mean first-person shooters, racing games, all of that, I have not had a good time with these. Same as the Retroid Pocket Flip 2, it is just unfortunate that they went with this style of trigger that does not just curve around, which is something I wish they did. Now, on the topic of overall ergonomics and comfort, I'm going back and forth on this. There are times where I'm okay with it, but there are more times that I'm like, I really want to see the grip and I really want to see how that might help with holding this. Because there are certain times where I feel a little bit cramped. There is no offset here. So you're trying to hold this in different ways and you don't have a nice way that you could really get a grip on it. And it's a bit different than the Flip 2 in that way because the Flip 2 had a lot of inset controls. So you are kind of holding it in different ways. I think the grip is really going to be a necessity for at-home usage. I would be fine with this on the go. If I'm just booting this for 30 minutes, maybe an hour, I would be fine with this. But if I'm going to be playing longer than that, especially at home, I'm going to want a grip. Now, just quickly on the grip conversation, I do want to mention where I'm coming from. I want to preface this with something. When I talk about needing a grip, I personally need a grip for the 3DS, the new 3DS. I can't use this without a grip. That's one example. I can't use the Vita without a grip. And I apologize, it's kind of dirty, but I can't use the Vita without a grip. I can't use a Switch 1 without a grip. The Switch OLED, can't use it without a grip. Switch 2, can't use it without a grip. So I want my perspective to come through as somebody who really needs grips for comfort for a lot of these handhelds, especially clamshells. When I'm telling you that that's why I think this might need a grip, that's where I am coming from. So maybe see if you match with my perspective on that. But otherwise, the grip is like $10, so it doesn't really hurt to maybe grab it just in case. But I feel like it might be a necessity for at-home gaming. And you could just take it off when you're on the go. That is how I'm feeling so far. We will see for the review. I don't like having to say that a grip might be a necessity for a clamshell because that means they got the ergonomics wrong. But they can't change it at this point. So if you want to buy this device and you want to use it and have the best comfort, the grip might be what you need. Now, as far as heat and thermals go, you have to be very careful with this. The fan is on the back. If you put it down like this, you won't get any cool air coming in. And so this does get hot. And over my time playing this last night, after the live stream, I went through a lot of different tests. Because of where the ribbon cable of the screen is, I know where it is because this part of the screen does get hot. And so you basically have a part of the screen where it's nice and cool. You have this part of the screen which gets warm to hot, depending on what you're playing. And then the actual device will warm up, but it hasn't been hot. The only time I found it hot was when I was charging while playing. Otherwise, if I am just playing a normal game, including Wii U, like this, I haven't found it to get really hot or crazy. It does get warm, but nothing exceptional. So just keep that in mind. I know a lot of people are going to ask about battery tests. That will be coming in my final review. I haven't done any sort of testing as of yet. I do actual in-depth testing, not 15-minute intervals, so it will take me a while for that. Now, one area of concern that I'm happy to alleviate fears on is the speakers. Speakers sound really good to me. I don't really have an issue with them. I think they sound great. They sound better than I expected. And so I don't think anybody's going to really have a problem with speakers. Unless you're maybe an audiophile of some sort, but yeah, even then, I think this sounds great. Now, I do want to talk about the screen a little bit because to me, the screen is actually fantastic. They did a really good job on the 6-inch custom OLED that they have up here. I from the first part that I looked at it, it is very crisp. You can even see it sort of here. Just because of the PPI, it is very crisp compared to something like the Odin 2 Portal, which I absolutely love the Odin 2 Portal screen. But when you go a little bit smaller, you obviously have better PPI, so it looks a little bit crisper. And that to me was a very surprising thing to notice because, yeah, it is smaller, but it was the first thing I noticed was how crisp the screen is. And so this is fantastic at the top. Now, something I do want to mention is there is no matching brightness for the top and bottom. What you can do is there is a slider that will set both screens to maximum brightness. However, if you set them a little bit lower, you can see the difference in brightness here. There is no actual setting to say match the brightness of this to the brightness of this. It is something that I hope they can add because that will be something that I think a lot of people want, including myself. What I have been doing is just doing it manually, kind of looking at it. There, we kind of got it already in the first try, but it is a feature that is missing. Now, on the topic of software, besides the regular Android software that you know all these handhelds have, there are a lot more that you can do here. So I just showed it off. There is the dual screen, top screen, and bottom screen brightness. So you can change all of that. You can adjust the volume for top screen and bottom screen. It is a little wonky currently for the bottom screen, but the top screen seems to work. And the actual volume controls control the top screen at the moment only. You can set up so that you can only see the top screen as opposed to top and bottom, or you can only see the bottom screen, or you can see both. So you have those options available. If we pop into settings at the bottom, there are a whole bunch of other options here at the bottom. You can auto lock where the controls go. So if you only want controls for the top screen, you can lock them to top or bottom. Otherwise, they go where you tap. 3DS games, DS games, they know where to work. They will work properly with using the touchscreen and the controls at the top. I showed it off with Icarus earlier in the video, so they all work. Otherwise, you have your normal modes for changing here at the bottom. Now, I do want to talk about this 120 Hertz mode. If you remember, one of the issues with Android was that if you have 120 Hertz top, 60 Hertz bottom, both screens will turn to 60 Hertz. Thankfully, AYN found a workaround, and now you can have 120 Hertz on the top and 120 Hertz on the bottom. However, the bottom has a bunch of screen tearing and other things because of what they did to get that to work. Now, I will say, I have actually stayed in 120 Hertz mode for both, and it's been fine, surprisingly. Now, you will notice it on the bottom if you go and play a game on the bottom. So here is Adventure Island with 120 Hertz, and you can see the waves. Not the waves on screen from the OLED, but you can see the waves of the trees moving back and forth. That is just a result of what they are doing to get this to 120 Hertz. Now, if I turn this off, I turn this to 60 Hertz mode, and we go back and play, there's no issues. You can see nothing's wrong, and this is how you would normally play it. So the problem really becomes, if you are going to play a game that is movement heavy on the bottom, you probably will want to go in, change this to 60 Hertz mode. For me, I've actually just been sticking to 120 Hertz mode because there isn't a lot of games that I am playing on the bottom, especially for 3DS and DS. Sonic Rush would be one. Contra 4 is another where you'd probably want to change it to 60 Hertz mode. Everything else, you can pretty much just stick in 120 Hertz mode. You get the benefits of reduced latency for top and bottom and all of that. So let's look at Contra 4, for example. Here's Contra 4, and I left the top up to scale the entire screen. You can change that, so I just want to quickly show you. We can change it. It's something you have to set up yourself, but you can change it to match if you want. You have to customize it yourself. I am probably off by like a pixel or two, but otherwise you have it, both screens. And I want you to see if you can guess what the bottom screen is for Hertz. Can you tell if it's 160 or 120 or 60 Hertz right now? That's why most of the times, I don't know if you would notice it depending on the game that you're playing. this is one of the games where you probably could notice it. Now I'm going to tell you it is 120 hertz. So if I go and change this back to 60 and we keep playing. And so here we have Contra just going at 60 hertz. Both screens working. Everything works really good. It's a good experience for anybody that wants to do 3DS or DS on the screen. It's perfect. Now, like I mentioned, you can just change the screen back if you want, and you want to use the actual full screen. You can swap the screens. I have it set to L3. You can put them up top, bottom, whatever you want to do. This is a Melon DS fork to get this to work, but it has all of the settings that you would want, and Melon DS works just fine. Azahar also works just fine. There is no issues here. Once I changed it over to the fork version of Azahar, no issues with the top and bottom. Everything works just good. I played a lot of 3DS games. I'm going to do a dedicated 3DS video, so don't worry too much about not seeing a lot of footage today. You will have plenty of footage to look at, trust me. Now, one last thing I want to talk about is the other use cases besides DS and 3DS. Obviously, one of the big ones is throwing up Final Fantasy VII on the top and a guide on the bottom. So what happens here? You have to use your hand or finger to scroll through. You can also use the stick to get to wherever you want to be. And then you just have to tap on the top whenever you're ready and you want to actually play the game. So you do have to tap on the screen to get it to work. Otherwise, let's say I'm going here, the controls won't work on the top. And so that is something that you just have to change back and forth. And it might be a little bit weird. See, I just accidentally tapped something. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. So you just have to be careful with it. There are scenarios like that where you just have to make sure you tapped on the screen before you go forward. Now, I can't show this in today's video because I'm using my computer to record audio, but I did try out Artemis streaming with guide on the bottom. It worked the exact same way. You have 120 hertz on the top. You have the guide on the bottom. It is a perfect scenario. That feels great to use. Guide on the bottom, streaming on the top. It's awesome. Okay, let me do a quick summary here at the end. I'm pretty sure I've been talking for way too long for a first impressions video, so I do apologize. I probably didn't show off nearly the amount of stuff that I want to, but I will have dedicated videos on 3DS and DS so you can see what those look like. So I apologize if I'm missing quite a bit of gaming footage. My live stream has a lot more of that if you want that. My thoughts currently, for DS and 3DS, there is no better way right now to play these games. Absolutely. I have a 3DS. It is great in a lot of different ways. This is a better 3DS in a lot of different ways. Not just the fact that you can play DS, not just the fact that you can play 3DS, you can play everything else that you want. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 can do Switch, it can do WinLater and GameHub if you want to do that. You can do streaming. There are so many other things you can do here that makes this a fantastic experience. Now, I will say my concerns are still ergonomics and comfort. My concerns are still the triggers. My concerns, still maybe battery, we will see. Although you can see I've only lost 4% from the time that I started recording up until now. So there are a lot of different things that we have to talk about still for the review. But first impressions right now, I'm excited about this. This looks great. It definitely fits the need of what I wanted, which is just a small device for on-the-go usage. And I am wondering with the grip, if it will become a device that I could use more at home than anything else. But we will see whenever I get the grip in. That will probably be my retail unit whenever that arrives, because I did order the Max White Thor, because the black, it's not my thing. And yeah, that's all I have for today. So hopefully that helped you with a first impressions video. I apologize if it was mostly rambling. I kind of just sat down and started filming and just did a one-take sort of video to get my thoughts out, because I know a lot of people are excited for this and want to hear somebody talk about it. And so that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about retro handhelds. Support me through YouTube membership if you like my stuff. And hope you all have a good one.